Welcome to the Wombs of the World podcast. My name is Charlotte Brielle Huff. I am your host and the founder and executive director of Wombs of the World, a global maternal health initiative rooted in education, storytelling, and community care. Here on this podcast, we explore how culture is dynamic, but birth is universal. This is a space for remembering, for reimagining, and for reclaiming birth as a sacred thread that connects us all. Today, I am so honored to be joined by Dr. Nicole Rankins, a board-certified OB-GYN, childbirth educator, and the host of Birth with Power podcast. Through her work, Dr. Rankins is helping families navigate pregnancy and birth with clarity, evidence-based information, and a deep respect for informed choice and autonomy. Our conversation today will explore the intersection of medical care, education, and empowered birth, and how we can continue building bridges between providers and birth workers so that mothers and families feel informed, supported, and truly seen. Well, thank you so much for being with me today on the Wombs of the World podcast. I am super, super grateful to sit down with an OB-GYN such as yourself, and I really would love to shine a little bit of spotlight on you, your journey, and your work right now. Could we start off by just having you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me. So I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins. I'm a board certified OB-GYN. I have been a doctor for 24 years. That is
Wow.
insane. And finished my training 20 years ago. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So I've been at this a long time. Now I work as an OB hospitalist. So I work just in the hospital. 99% of what I do is on labor and delivery and helping with birth or any issues surrounding birth. And I also host a podcast called Birth with Power, which is like my third child. I have two daughters. And then my podcast, Birth with Power, which has been downloaded 2.8 million times at this yeah, so so
Wow.
that's my really my heart of what I do. My passion and purpose is service and helping people have a better hospital birth experience. It just is a bit of an evolution for me. I initially thought I was going to do academics and be in academic medicine and research and that kind of thing. That didn't work out for me for a number of reasons. And then I kind of found my way into podcasting and being in the hospital and went through my own sort of evolution of how we treat folks during birth and realizing that we don't center people birthing folks the way that we should. And so that's what I aim to change.
That is amazing and much needed work. And thank you so
Mm.
much for doing that from the inside, because
Yes.
the reality is that most people are giving birth in hospitals.
Yeah,
Most
most
people
people
are
are.
giving birth.
Yeah.
And so how can we create systems that do center the birthing person?
Yep. Absolutely. Uh-huh.
I have so many questions for you,
Sure.
but
Go for it.
in the work that you're doing, wanting
Hmm.
to really center the birthing person, would you just share a little bit about like what that journey has been like and some of the challenges and celebrations that you've encountered along the way?
Okay, that's a great question. Probably the biggest challenge is that humans are so resistant to change. Uh, and physicians get particularly entrenched in the way that they're used to practicing, and it's hard for them to look at things a different way.
Mm.
We don't even realize some of the ways that our system so thoroughly centers everyone other than the person giving birth, other than the woman giving birth. I will say an example for me is that it did not occur to me. This is gonna sound crazy and it's so embarrassing, but it didn't occur to me until I was probably like, I don't know, at least 10 years in practice that I should stop and ask if it was okay for me to do a cervical exam before I actually
Mm.
did it. Because we're
Hmm.
so, and that doesn't mean I was ever mean. No one would say I was mean or anything like that. You just, I go in the room,
Totally.
hey, Dr. Rankins, I'm here to check your cervix, see how your labor progress is going. Just put your ankles together, let your legs relax out to the side. You're going to feel some pressure. Never at any point did I stop to say, is this okay to do? Because we were never taught that. It was like, I need to go in here. I need to do this thing. So that's what I'm going to do without realizing that we need to pause and make sure
Yeah.
it's okay. So that's just an example of how things get really entrenched. Things that happen like breaking people's water without consent, things like that. And these things are not done maliciously. They really aren't. It's just sort of the system and the culture and the way things are done. So I would say the culture piece is hard when you see it and how entrenched it is, but it's also encouraging because it can be changed. It's something that can be modified. I always say if I can turn from someone who used to roll my eyes at birth plans, and that's the God's honest truth, from someone who rolls my eyes at birth plans to someone who helps women. I teach how to write a birth plan. I sit down at the bedside and read through a birth plan. If I can change, then we can all change. So we can shift culture, we can change things. And the final thing I will say is that it's actually not that hard. Like we make things more complicated, I think, than they need to be. We just have to treat people with respect and dignity and listen to them. Like it really like literally that's all it boils down to. It's not like 50,000 protocols and policies and things like that. I mean, that helps, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people need like that checklist, unfortunately, in order to do the right thing. But it's really just about like listening people and
Yeah.
treating them with respect, listening to people and treating them with respect.
Absolutely. I love that you said that because and that's something that I'm constantly talking about as well. I'm like, it's not that hard. Like
Mm-mm.
being kind and being respectful should be very foundational, but you're completely right that it's when something isn't taught and then you get rhythm around it, that's just what you're going to do. And I see that regularly when we go and work in clinics in Tanzania. That's
Mhm.
something that there is never malicious intent. Like the
Mhm.
nurses there are s- sweethearts, all of them.
Right.
And they have been taught procedure. And it's a whole
Mhm.
lot easier to follow steps that you've been
Mhm.
taught, like the steps
Mhm.
of prepping for a C-section,
Right.
versus managing someone who's having very what do they call those mothers? Uncooperative mothers.
Mhm.
When a woman is being uncooperative and it's
Mm.
turning into a potentially complicated vaginal birth, they do not have the tools or resources because they've just
Right.
never been taught those tools and resources. And so
Sure.
that's something for me where I'm like, all the ideas go off in my head of like, okay, that's very much up my alley because a lot of those are doula skills,
Mhm.
the
For
skills of
sure.
listening, the skills of
For
pause. And so
sure.
I applaud you that you have given yourself permission to learn and change and evolve because I think that
Yeah.
many, many people don't.
That is very true, and
Many
and
people
and
don't.
so many fields, in so many fields. And I will say, at least in the US, which is what I know, is that our system also isn't necessarily set up to help people be their best. Like physicians are working in a backdrop of where they have like entirely too many patients in the office. So they may be running from the office to the hospital,
Hmm.
trying to manage things. They may be on call and then and be up during the night and then expected to work in the office the next day. There are reimbursement pressures where you're not necessarily getting compensated for providing more complex care for more complex patients. So there are a lot of things that impact our ability to show up well. However, we should not take the problems of our system out on our patients. We need
Absolutely.
to fix the system and then
Hmm.
address the way that we care for people at the bedside.
Well said.
Mm.
And the reminder, and this is a conversation I have with doulas because that's primarily who I work with, is that like doctors are people too. Like you don't
Mhm.
know what happened at work yesterday. You don't know what
Right.
happened in the room next door. Part of my job when I'm in a birth space is I'm also trying to love on the doctor and love on the nurses and like I'm like, have you stayed hydrated today? Like, do
Right,
you need
right,
have you had your water? Do you need
right,
a snack?
right,
Like I got
right,
so many
right.
snacks for you as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And so just trying to do a little bit of that bridging because
Mhm.
I think that doctors are some of the most burnt out, overworked,
For
over
sure.
givers. Our board president, Alexis Thompson, she's about to graduate from medical school. And I've seen her for these last 4 years work so hard. She's pursuing to
Mhm.
become an OB-GYN. And like, it's crazy. Like medical
Right,
school, how hard she's been working and everything on her
right.
plate. And so it's just given me I mean, I already had so much respect as someone who always I wanted to be a neonatologist when I was little. And
Uh,
then when I was like, oh, that's a lot of school. That
right.
was never, that was never good. That was not going to happen. So then seeing Alexis, go back to school, I think she went back at 28 or 29. And this is after having two previous master's degrees and being a doula and being a photographer and like
Sure.
doing all this amazing work I think similarly to yourself, she's like, I want to be able to change systems from within and offer the most beautiful care to people because birth can be so beautiful and
It
so
can indeed.
empowering.
It can indeed. Yeah.
So, as like working in the hospital
Mhm.
setting, what advice do you have for parents as they prepare to enter that space so that they can have one of the better birth experiences out there?
Yeah. Okay. So let me try not to give like the 5,000 word
Yeah.
answer. So, like,
Take us away.
yes, the top three things are childbirth education, and childbirth education. You have to understand what's going on in your body so you can
Hmm.
be prepared to manage it when it happens. Even if you plan to get an epidural, you still need
Yep,
to know about the process and what happens. And some hospitals offer childbirth education, and that can be okay, but be careful because sometimes they'll be tailored to get you like sort of into the hospital system. So, childbirth education is so important. And then asking all the questions and preparing during the prenatal period. Like so many people think like, well, I'm going to, write a birth plan and I'm going to bring my birth plan to the hospital and like that is going to, I'm ready. And if you do this birth plan and you bring it to the hospital and they look at your birth plan and they're like, well, we won't do none of that. So um, now you're stuck. Okay. So
yeah.
you need to understand what you're getting into well before you get to the hospital. So you need to ask your doctor questions. Like if you are looking for to have a low intervention, unmedicated birth, ask your doctor how many patients of yours have an unmedicated birth? Are you comfortable with caring for people who want that? Or if you want an epidural, like how soon can I get it? Things like that.
Totally.
Am I going to be able to move? Can I eat during labor? You need to ask and make sure that you all are on the same page. And that person being nice does not guarantee that they're going to be on the same page for the things that are important to you. And the
Yeah.
earlier you ask those questions, the better. I always say a good, like, kind of test question is what are your thoughts on doulas? Just ask your doctor. Not like anything, I just want to know what you think about doulas. If they give you a lot of pushback, like, I don't understand why people have doulas. I mean, I guess they can be okay or something like that. Huge red flag. Okay. Research is very clear that having someone like a doula is going to improve outcomes. It
Oh,
increases your chances for having a vaginal birth, helps you with pain management, helps with your overall birth experience. So if you have someone who's on board with those kinds of things, and then, plus one, if they say, hey, I know a couple who I can tell you about, is even better. So you
mhm.
just want to make sure that you all are on the same page. So you need to ask questions during the prenatal period so that when you walk into your birth, you have an idea of I already know that I'm going to be able to move around. I already know that the hospital has wireless monitoring or it has tubs or it has showers. And I'm not finding all these things out at the last minute because the two biggest influences will be who's at your birth and where you give birth. So you just need to understand those well before you get to the hospital. Like I can't overemphasize that enough.
Want to say like say it louder for the people in the back. All of that, all of that was so wise, and it just it blows my mind how we put so much um, intention and planning into other parts of our lives. Like people will
Mm-hmm.
spend years planning a wedding, for
Yep.
example, or
Yeah.
if you're going to get like a, ACL surgery or something, you have so many visits with your doctor
Right.
and you talk about it and they walk you through the surgery. And then
Mm-hmm.
we think that childbirth is going to just be like an in and out, easy
Right.
experience without the preparation. I am curious as to in your 24 years of practice,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen the culture of the birthing person and like the expectations of the birthing person change over time?
Yes. I definitely think there used to be a lot more of just sort of do what the doctor says, for lack of a better way of putting it, and
Hmm.
not so much expressing desires and things like that. I think people are coming into the birth experience, which I think is a great thing, a lot more centered and like these are the things that are important to me and I want to be actively involved in this process, whereas before it was kind of like even the word delivery is inappropriate because it puts the power, so to speak, on my hands, like I'm delivering the baby. Like I'm
Mhm.
just making sure the baby's not hitting the floor for God's sakes. Like the woman is doing a lot, like the heavy lifting here. You know what I mean? So it's really
Yeah.
more they're giving birth. So definitely, I would say I think which is a good thing. However, the quality of the information that people are getting is sometimes questionable. The internet rewards polarization and things that show you like clicks and likes, not things that are necessarily the best for you. And sometimes people don't know how to discern the difference. So they end up seeing like 500 videos of, you know exactly what to do, and your body's going to birth this baby, without the realities that birth is unpredictable. I always say the only predictable thing about birth is that it is unpredictable. I cannot control birth. If your doctor, oh, you can just come in and have an induction, and, you have the baby in a couple of, it's not because we controlled it. Okay. Like
Mhm.
I can't control birth. You actually can't control birth. Your baby is controlling the process. They
Mhm.
don't tell us how they're going to do it. And we have to
Mhm.
ride whatever they tell us. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's so important to understand that you can't guarantee a certain outcome. You can be prepared, and most of the time things are okay, but I think where people really get into trouble is not being prepared for the possibility that things may not go exactly as they anticipated. That
Yeah.
maybe a C-section might be the best way for your baby
Mhm.
to make it into this world. Now, again, a lot of that is on us because you're questioning whether or not you can trust me, whether or not I'm telling you like what's in your best interest. So it can be hard to know that. That's why you want to have a trusting relationship before you go in. But again, you have to be prepared for the fact that birth may take twists and turns, and that's a normal part of the process.
Absolutely. And Wombs of the World runs travel programs, and I'm also saying that for travel. I'm like, travel is so full of twists and turns, and you have to
Mhm.
be flexible for all of it. And there's, the metaphors between birth and travel are endless. I feel like I come up with new ones
Right.
every day. Like one a recent one is about I actually had a client who equated giving birth to flying because both times it's like, you get on the plane and you have to just ride it out and you don't know,
Mhm.
there might be crazy turbulence, there might be this, there might be that.
Yep.
And then eventually, hopefully, you make it there in one
Right.
piece. But even,
Yes.
like there's still
Yes.
that. And going off of that, I was like, okay, and as doula, I am your flight attendant.
Mhm.
Like you don't panic until I panic. And
Right.
so anytime I'm on an airplane and there is turbulence, I am literally looking for a flight attendant to be like, is she calm? Because if she's
Right.
calm and like she's still serving drinks, we're good. We're still up here.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's yeah, people just being prepared with better education.
Mhm.
Something that I'm sure you know this as well, but C-section rates are just skyrocketing all over
Mhm.
the world right now. And like
Mhm.
the medicalization of birth is seemingly out of hand. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering if, from your observation, if like where that is stemming from.
Yeah. People are going to be so dissatisfied with this answer, but it's because the really real reason is because we're impatient
Cool.
and we don't give enough time for birth to happen. I work at a hospital where, and I will say there's a part two to that, but I work at a hospital we have a level 3 NICU, which is one of the highest in our
Hmm.
region. We're the regional hospital for high risk pregnancies in the system. So we can take babies down to 22 weeks. So we have
Wow.
the higher risk patients, but our overall C-section rate is 22%. Um, it ranges from
Nice.
yeah, 20 to 22%. And the reason is because we're just patient with birth. People ask all the time, like, what do y'all do? What are y'all doing? What are y'all? And it's like literally we're just patient with birth.
Yeah.
So I think being patient is so important. Now there's some other things that come with that. Like there's some medical legal issues where they're the old adage that you never get sued for doing a C-section, but you will get sued for not doing
Yep.
a C-section soon enough. So that comes into play if there are concerns about the heart rate tracing. That's for communication, and things are really, really important to help people stay on the same page, but really it boils down to a lot more patience and then supported things like moving, and we have hydrotherapy, and we have doulas, and we have midwives. So all of those things can help with reducing the C-section rate. Also, again, not as hard as people I think make it out to be.
Yeah, there's a midwife that I'm friends with, and she says that as she mentors, sometimes she'll mentor medical students,
Mm.
and they'll be witnessing her in a hospital birth, working as a midwife, and she's literally like, "Sit on your hands,
Right.
like do nothing." He's like,
Right.
"What do we do? What do we do now? We need to be
Right.
doing something." And it's like,
Right.
yes, what you will do is sit on your hands
Pretty
and
much.
observe and go
Right.
breathe in that corner. And
Right.
but that's something that I don't think that the hospital system, the birth system, really makes space for patients. It's not designed for patients. Patients isn't a box to check, and there's so many
Yeah.
boxes to check.
Yeah, not really. I tell folks the first intervention in your birth is stepping into the hospital doors.
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, we it's so hard for us. It's like we don't know, like you're here, so we're supposed to be doing something. So
Yeah.
we don't know how to just kind of like let things flow. Now there's some issues that come with the realities of like getting patients through and opening up rooms and things like that. So that's just the reality of where things are. But yes, it's
Mhm.
hard. Hospitals are just we have a hard time just sort of
Huh.
not
Well,
doing anything.
I also think that the mothers are impatient. Like that they're that it's a two-way street. At that point, you've
Mhm.
been laboring for 24
Mhm.
hours, you're
Mhm.
tired,
Mhm.
literally are impatient to meet your baby. And so
Right.
when the opportunity at that point is like, well, do you want to talk about a C-section?
Right.
Even in my clients, I've witnessed them just be so ready, like so
Yeah.
ready to be
Yeah.
done. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's another reason that the childbirth education is so important, to teach patients and to
Mhm.
let people know that birth is going to be on its own time.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
How has your hospital done such a good job? Is it 'cause you're there?
They were doing well even before I got there, I will say. But I have a lot of colleagues. We all practice very similarly in that we're very patient centered. We're very um we discuss things, we take our time. I think it helps having hospitalists. So what we do is we relieve some of the pressure of a 5 p.m. C-section because somebody wants to go home for dinner. So I'm going to be in the hospital. It doesn't matter to me whether you give birth at 9 p.m. or 3 a.m. I'm still gonna go home in the morning and have the next day off. I do my shift and then I'm gone.
Yeah,
So having hospitalists helps relieve that. Our doctors turn over their care to patients to us. That allows for more time. We're not rushing things. So I will say having hospitalists work um, helps
amazing.
a lot. Another thing that helps is actually you have to track what you hope to change. So you have to look at people's numbers. And so they did a lot of work with like individual C-section rates and reporting C-section rates back to people and then showing how they compare to their peers. Peer pressure,
Nice.
yes, is can be very powerful motivator because
Yeah.
you really end up practicing in a vacuum, so to speak. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
how Dr. Such and Such does a delivery. I'm not in there with them. So you don't necessarily have a sense for how other people are. The nurses do, but and doulas do because y'all see different folks, but doctors don't. So tracking that data, giving it back to people, and then you start off with it being privately available, and then eventually you flip it to publicly available and discussed in the open, and that will help change behavior. To
That's
to get
cool.
yeah, to get people to improve their rates. Now, I will say one of the things that I've realized with C-section rates are certainly important, and we have to do a lot to bring those down. But we do need to do a little bit better data capturing of because I do see like we have more vaginal births, but I think sometimes that means we're going to have like a few more postpartum hemorrhages, or we're going to have a few more severe lacerations because we're just having more vaginal births. So we need to track all of that information, which I don't think we
Mm.
necessarily capture very well.
It's data is hard.
Hmm.
Data is very, very hard to capture, especially the I get that question all the time in the doula space of like, well, do you have data on your services? And I'm like, how do you quantify a positive birth experience?
Right.
You
Right.
know, like versus, yeah, there are other metrics that are far more quantifiable, but
Yeah.
birth is,
Yeah.
yeah, birth is just so much. It covers so many different things. If you were to give birth today, what would you want in your birth plan?
That's a great question. So I would definitely want a doula. I would probably want a midwife. Um, or at minimum, like an obstetrician who's very like midwifey.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I would want the option. I would know that I want to know that I was giving birth in a place that would support me being able to get up and move, that would support me being able to eat during labor because
Yeah,
it's a energetically demanding process, and really starving people during that is not appropriate. So, um,
and the
what
fact
else?
that that's up for debate still is like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah, yeah. So I think in my now I would say I'm a little more. I'd probably be a little more on the crunchier side now
I
than
love
I was
this.
in the beginning. So, yeah, those I don't think I would have, like, a crazy 20-page wordplay or anything like that, but definitely one more, like, lower intervention and trying to connect with some of the more peaceful aspects, if I could, full well knowing that sometimes it ain't a peaceful process and there's
Mhm.
yelling and screaming, and that's just a necessary part of it. But,
Yep.
yeah, just I think having, like, flexibility and being open to things, yeah.
Mm, awesome.
I definitely would want, do not turn on the freaking lights. I actually don't like a lot of lights in the room as the physician personally, but I always defer to what the patient wants, but I'm like, it's I don't know, like, I can't stand, like, a really bright
Overhead
room
hospital
or
light.
yeah,
Yeah,
like the bright hospital lights. So I will definitely string the lights. We actually have those in all of our hospital rooms, the lights strung
love that.
around just to create a nicer atmosphere.
Yeah. I was just talking about that with another doula about how a huge part of our job is to like bring the vibes. And we were talking about how in our doula bag somebody has like a projector of the night sky, and
Mm,
they like turn off all the lights and then they
right,
do that. And I'm just like,
right.
that's a great tool
Yes.
in your doula bag
Yeah,
to bust out at
yeah,
a hospital birth.
yeah.
And then the like nurses come in and they're like, what trance space did I just enter? Like it's like you know that you succeeded in your
Yeah.
role as doula if you set the vibe for everybody
Yes.
else as they
Yeah.
enter the space.
Yep. Because it act people underestimate the importance of your environment on how you give birth, because your body will birth a lot better if you feel safe
Mhm.
and if you feel calm and at ease. If you're scared, your labor will stop. I've had handful of patients, at least 3 I can recall off the top of my head, where they were so terrified that like they ended up choosing a C-section because they
Yeah.
could like I was we were giving them all the Cytotec Pitocin. You can dump it. I could replace your blood with Pitocin. Nothing's gonna happen if you're terrified. So the
Yep.
environment really does make a difference in helping you feel safe.
Hmm. Absolutely. I was just explaining in Tanzania to the staff there what oxytocin is.
Mm,
And that's something that they seem to just kind of miss in their medical training. When I
right,
asked them initially, I was like, I thought that that would be like a very easy answer as I was doing my
right,
presentation. I thought we'd have like a call and response moment about
right,
about oxytocin, and
right.
they were like we administer that after delivery to prevent hemorrhaging. And I was like,
Interesting.
"Oh,
It's a lot
okay.
more than
Let's."
that.
It's a
Yeah.
lot more than that. So I started talking. Yeah, I started talking about like the hormones of birth and
Mhm,
like what
mhm.
things um that I think maybe as birth workers I forget this isn't common knowledge.
Right,
It should be common knowledge for people that are
right.
working in birth spaces, regardless of where you are in the world.
Yeah,
So that's just like a flaw to the educational system,
right,
generally
right.
speaking. But bringing that back to like, you have to make them feel safe.
Mhm.
And that's not, and it breaks my heart in so many places around the world. That is just so not the priority. So bringing it back to what you were saying at the beginning, like it really, really just boils down to respecting someone, showing
Mhm.
respect.
Right.
There's this organization that Wombs of the World works with called the International Childbirth Initiative, the ICI. I don't know if you've heard of the ICI, but
What's that?
it's this list of 12 steps for like safer and more respectful mother baby family care.
Mm.
And what's really cool about the 12 steps is that they're super tangible. It's like the 12 steps are not asking for like huge changes or policy changes or shifting
Right.
things the way that, say, like making a hospital like a baby friendly
Mhm.
hospital.
Mm.
That requires a lot of steps. Like you have to
Right.
actually do things, you have to showcase
Right.
things. The 12 steps of the ICI is literally, the first one is like treat mothers with respect and dignity.
There you
Like,
go.
and treat people. And another step is implement evidence-based care.
Right.
Another one is give someone access to a support person, whether that's a
Mhm.
doula or a family member.
Right.
Let them know their options. One of the steps is doctors, the team needs to take care of themselves. There needs to be something in place
Mm.
where you can take care of yourself. And
Right.
when I was reading over these 12 steps, it's, I think, similar to your experience of like it hadn't occurred to you before to like have
Mhm.
that pause of
Mhm.
consent.
Mhm.
That I'm watching them take it in, and it's like they haven't thought about
Right.
structure to take care of themselves before. Sometimes we just
Right.
need to plant these seeds and give permission, and you hear it, you speak it for the first time, and that can implement so much change. And so I'm
Definitely.
going to add a step to the
Mhm.
ICI about patience.
Yeah.
Maybe step 13 of just sit on your
Yes.
hands, do nothing. So in your experience working in the hospital, we touched on some of these, but there are certain policies and protocols that are just like so outdated, but it takes
Mhm.
so long for hospital policies to get up to speed with
Mhm.
evidence, such as eating in labor. Do you
Mhm.
have tips and tools around advocacy for how either a doula or a birthing person can advocate for themselves in that space to demand evidence-based care when it's not part of policy?
Yeah, that can be really hard. This is another situation where you really wanna know this ahead of time, like
Yeah.
what you're gonna walk into if you can, so you're not, like, fighting this battle during labor.
Hmm.
So, if you know ahead of time that, "Yeah, sure, we support you eating," then that's fine. If you know ahead of time that, "No, you can't eat anything," then you have to adjust accordingly. You can decide that, "I'm gonna eat before I go to the hospital." You can decide that you're gonna sneak in food and eat anyway, because some people do that. Um, or you
Yes.
can decide yeah, or you can decide that I'm just gonna tell them that I'm going to eat, and I'm gonna eat when I'm hungry. And so, you just kinda have to decide if that's a battle that you wanna have, and how you wanna deal with it. Because maybe you decide, I don't wanna be fighting over them telling me and trying not to get food. Because I think what people think is gonna happen is that if you talk to people enough, they're gonna change their mind, and they're gonna say, "Oh, yeah, never mind. Yeah, you don't have to abide by our policy." But that's not in reality what happens. What
Hmm.
happens is that it just ends up being a eternal conflict. Like, "I wanna eat. No, you can't eat. I wanna eat, but you can't eat. I wanna eat. You can't eat." Like, so it doesn't ever get to resolution. So that's why you have to know ahead of time, and
Yep.
then you can plan accordingly. I hate to
Yep.
say it like that, but that's just sort of the reality of how it is.
Yeah, and and sometimes we do need to say it plainly like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
to remind people, and that's what they're not getting off of TikTok videos,
Right,
you
exactly,
know?
exactly. And you have to be comfortable with the consequences of the choices that you make. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to eat, and then you eat, and then, you throw everything up. So, like, like you have to be comfortable with, like, I said I was going to eat and this thing happened,
Mhm.
and not blame it on whatever,
Yeah.
anybody else. Like, I just have to say we all have to be comfortable with the consequences of our choices.
Mhm.
Another one is IV. So
Mm.
if like you don't need IV fluids during labor. Okay, so you can drink fluids. There's everybody should be permitted to drink. So you can just either not have an IV, or you can have a saline lock where it's just like there in case you need it. So if you decide that, okay, I don't want an IV, then I don't want the saline lock, I don't want anything there, then you have to accept the possibility that in that small chance that if you had a hemorrhage, for instance, and we needed to get IVs, fluids, or blood or anything quickly, that there's going to be a little bit of a delay. So
Hmm.
just you have to think through all of the consequences. And that's not like bad or good, that's a small risk, but you just need to know what when you make the decision, the possibility of things that could happen. I think too often on social media, it's just like, well, just refuse an IV and you don't have to do it. And you don't, but
Hmm.
keep in mind that there may be um, consequences that happen to that. Not likely, but everyone has the right or should know what the possibility and things
Yeah.
are. And generally, I will say, this is the last thing I'll say. When I explain to people, like, hey, I don't think you're going to have problems with bleeding, but like postpartum hemorrhage can be unpredictable and sudden. And if it's really hard, if you're a hard stick, if people are easy stick, then I'm like, whatever, do whatever you want. But like, if you're a hard stick, then maybe it's because things can happen really quickly. We don't want to be um, wasting time. We want to get things happening quickly. Most people come around. It's not like I'm trying to force anything on anybody. So we have to do a better job of like explaining our thought process of why we're doing things and what I'm thinking through, and not just like, oh, that's just how it's done here.
Yeah. Yeah, explaining the
Hmm.
logic.
Yeah.
And the logic around eating, and I
Hmm.
would like your take on this as
Hmm.
a surgeon.
Hmm.
The primary reason that women are discouraged to eat during
Hmm.
labor is in case they have to go in for surgery.
Hmm.
What is the risk there? Is it that they're going to like throw up
Yeah.
when they receive anesthesia and they're going to
Hmm.
choke on their vomit? Is that the
Sure. Yeah. So not just in case they have to go in for surgery, but in case they have to go in for surgery and they have to have general anesthesia where they're completely asleep. Most of the time our anesthesia in obstetrics is regional, meaning you're
Yep.
awake. So it's an epidural or a spinal. So it's really under general anesthesia. There's an increased risk of aspiration where what's in your stomach can get into your lungs, and that can be devastating. But a few things to say about that. One is we have those that's based on studies from the 50s. We've come
Yeah.
a long way, a long way in our
Yes.
anesthetic techniques and making sure that, that those things don't happen, to the risk or minimized. And then let me give you another example. You can go to dinner. Okay. You could go to dinner outside of pregnancy. You can go to
Yep.
dinner. You
Mhm.
can eat a full meal.
Mhm.
God forbid you can get into a car accident. They're going
Mhm.
to take you to the hospital. They're going to intubate you and take you to surgery with a full stomach. Okay. So why are we like obsessing over this and obsession when we do surgeries all the time where
Mhm.
we don't know what's in people's stomachs. They may
Yep.
be, so
Yep.
yes, there are some physiologic things about obstetrics that increase the risk of aspiration. But again, I think we're making a much bigger deal out of this than it needs to be.
Yeah. Something I've been thinking about recently is the fact that we are awake for C-sections, for
Hmm.
cesarean births. Um, and that is just crazy to me that we choose to stay awake throughout a major abdominal surgery. I've been in many C-sections, and
Right,
I think that I'm like traumatized from C-sections. And if I ever have to have a C-section, I'm like, put me under. Like, there
right,
is no
right,
way I want
right.
to be remotely
Yeah,
awake for that. Like, why is it
yeah.
that like you're not awake during your ACL surgery and just
Right,
chatting with your
right,
doctor? Like,
right.
why?
Yeah,
Why? Like, it's
this is an interesting
wild.
phenomenon that we made the decision that we thought it would be better for people to be awake so they could be awake for the birth of their baby. Everybody just
Yeah.
assumes that
Yeah.
you want to be awake for the birth of your baby. But what we're actually finding is that some people are okay and would prefer to actually just be put out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
still regional anesthesia is safer. You can
Mm-hmm.
certainly get Medicaid. It's definitely safer than general anesthesia. So that is one thing.
Yeah.
But maybe some people want a little extra like medicine to help be more relaxed, but it really comes from the assumption that we thought people would want to be awake for the birth of their baby.
And I do think that a lot of people do, and I
Hmm.
have clients and friends who have had C-sections and they're totally fine. And like that was they were very well supported. They have music in
Hmm.
their ears. They had their partner next to their head. Like they got to the very like human
Right.
centered
Right.
C-section experience. And then I know other people who are deeply traumatized from that, and
Mhm.
they're like, why on earth was that
Right.
permissible to keep me
Right.
awake during that? Or the
Right.
partner is like, I just saw her get cut open, and how am
Right.
I supposed to recover
Yeah.
from that? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and then we had a summit back in October in Berlin, where we invited traditional birth workers and birth keepers and doulas and just people from all over the world came. It was amazing. We had over 30 countries there, 130 people, and we
Mm.
had a few OBs, and we had a a session on the ceremony of a C-section and how to like bring a lot of intention and ceremony and peace to that space, because I think that
Mhm.
so many people feel if they do end up with a belly birth that they didn't give birth, or
Right.
they're told that.
Right.
And so it was a workshop on how to bring ceremony back to a C-section. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, in your personal practice,
Mhm.
if you have anything that you bring to the space, because you seem to be really with it.
Yeah,
Y-
so definitely we always offer people the option to have music playing if they want to try to make it feel like a little more fun, whatever music they want to play. We at our hospital, if you want to have two people back there, that's totally fine. So,
Amazing.
yeah, so a doula and a partner, or mom and,
Yep.
the patient's mother and totally,
Hmm.
that's totally fine. I always remind people that I still do delayed cord clamping at the time of a C-section, so they'll still have that
Beautiful.
benefit.
Hmm.
And I always show the baby, like, as soon as we have a clear drape that we can use, I actually I lower the whole entire, like, OR drape and then just, like, hold the baby up so mom can I mean, sometimes it's, like, dripping and stuff, but so they can, like, see the baby and dad can take pictures and all those things, and then they get to take a look at the baby. And then so all of those things, because having had 2 C-sections myself, is you
Hmm.
wanna see your baby as soon as possible. I think folks do, and most people do,
Yeah,
see the
yeah, yeah.
baby. And then once we get the baby around to mom pretty quickly, like, there's just a quick assessment, because babies don't get that squeeze with the C-section like they get through the
Hmm.
vagina, because sometimes they need to be suctioned. So we do a quick assessment, and then we get baby around to mom, and we will do skin to skin in the OR if that's what people want to do. Now, we always say ahead of time, listen, it's awkward because you're laying on the table and like you're trying to, so so it's a little bit awkward, but we certainly try and do it very well. Or if the partner wants to hold the baby, then we do that. So those are some of the things that we try and do to help make it feel more like a more peaceful and like joyful experience for folks.
How many deliveries does your hospital see every year?
We're like 2,300, between 2,300 and 2,500, somewhere around there.
That's a great number.
Mhm.
That's a lot of births.
Yeah, we have a
Does
good amount.
your hospital offer like a blueprint of better births that can be shared with other hospitals? Do y'all
That's a
do
great question.
trainings?
I don't I no, mm-mm. No, I know that we exist as part of a larger healthcare system, and the larger healthcare system has identified our hospital as one of the best in the whole system, if not the best, in terms of maternal metrics. So they're always asking, like our nurse managers are always on like Zoom calls and things like that, where they're asking for our best practices. But I don't think so. I'll have to ask if we have like a set of standard things that we do. But I think it just came over time.
Yeah. But the accountability, the peer pressure model
Mm-hmm.
of those, that's brilliant, because you're totally right. Doctors are not able to observe each other and to see
Right.
how you're performing and doing
Mm-hmm.
things. And then the nurses and the doulas, we do, and like on our trips when doulas come together, they get to witness each other doulaing, and
Mm.
that is so special for them too, because normally,
Right.
like, maybe as you're getting started you get to shadow somebody. For the most
Right.
part, you just kind of figure it out as you go,
Yeah.
and you evolve in the space. So on that note of doulas in the space, do you have any tips, suggestions for doulas in how we can be a better bridge
Mhm.
within the medical system? Is there anything that you wish that every doula would do as she walked into a room for you, for the staff, more than for the
Oh,
mom?
yeah. I always think it's helpful when doulas are ready to like jump in and be helpful. So, they're helping the nurse with like getting the patient in position or going to get water or sitting with the patient in the shower. So I think just being like a nice person and creating an atmosphere of kindness, even when it's not initially returned, I think that eventually it kind of wears on. It's like we're human, and if you can make
Yeah.
that human connection, then that helps. Now, I would say things that are not good that I've seen are don't come in with this adversarial,
Yeah.
like, that doesn't help anybody, and it
Hmm.
certainly doesn't help your clients. So you
Hmm.
wanna try to create a kind space, and you don't wanna be dismissive of things. Just the other day, we had a doula who and people d again, well-meaning, like, she thought she was advocating, but she told the nurse something like, "Can you please get somebody in here who knows how to do this?" Like, while she was trying to find the baby's heart rate,
Ooh.
like, the patient was on the toilet and, like, leaning over. It's kinda hard to sorta but,
Yeah.
yeah, so she said it in a way that just wasn't, you know, to one of the sweetest nurses. So you wanna just have like, just be a kind person, and usually that kindness gets returned. Now,
Mm.
one thing I also will say that I think is, really important is you can what you are can be great about doing is putting pause, like adding a beat for people to think in the moment. So, it's great to say, "Hey, do you want a second to just think about it or talk about it?" And so that allows people to sort of process what's going on. And it's not that you're telling them that you have to make this decision, or it's just so often as medical professionals, we don't, because we got, whatever things to do. Sometimes we just need to step out and let people kind of have a conversation so they can come to whatever decision that they think is best or feel good about it. Maybe they just need a
Exactly.
minute for it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I think doulas can be great at just sort of saying that, like, do you want a minute to think about it? And then that kind of triggers folks to say, "Oh, do you want us to step out for a second and we can come back in 5 minutes?" Because
Hmm.
there's usually always time. It's
Hmm.
very rarely like a rush. You hear people say a lot, "I had an emergency C-section." I'm not dismissing what they said, but they didn't have an emergency C-section. What they had is a C-section that happened like 30 minutes later. Okay.
Hmm.
An emergency C-section is when we are ripping the cords out of the wall, like we are running, because it has to happen right now. So if it's not
Hmm.
happening right now, there's usually always a time to discuss.
Hmm.
And I think doulas are great about like, let's just take a moment and
Yeah.
pause.
That's the biggest thing I coach partners on. I have the dads or the partners repeat after me, "Thank you so much. Can we have a second to talk about it?"
Right. Yeah.
Like, when it comes from the partner too, and then I see the birthing person like look at partner like, "You advocated for me," and then
Right.
there's that like
Right.
rush of oxytocin
Right.
and
Right.
and
Right.
so yeah, that coming from the partner I think is great. But that's back to creating the vibe and giving a
Yeah.
little bit more space. And I love that I asked someone else on a podcast recently about like how would you define trauma informed care? That was and her answer was just like, I don't know, treat people like people and be nice and be respectful. Like it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what it boils back down to at the end of the day of just like, can we all treat each other with respect and with
Right.
kindness? And especially and I'm sure you experience this in your work, like you don't know who's going to be walking through that door. And every
Correct.
single
Mhm.
every single patient that comes in, you must treat with the best care that you can possibly treat them with. And you
Right.
might not get along with that person in a personal, outside of those
Mhm.
hospital walls. You may
Mhm.
never speak to them. That might not be
Right.
somebody that you would ever want to spend time with. That might not be somebody that you would feel safe around, but you will still be treating them with the utmost care because that's the role of the doctor is
Right.
to do no harm.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's something that we all need to come back to, like as a society, is this idea of like, can we just treat people with dignity and respect and
Yeah.
kindness
Definitely.
and not so much division that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
seeing here. Kind of on that note, but not entirely on that note,
Mhm.
I would just love if you had any insight regarding the how we can better equip people to advocate for themselves to reduce the atrocious health disparities that we are
Mhm.
seeing in our
Mhm.
country,
Mhm.
especially involving women of color in the birth
Right.
space.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of this boils down to like policy changes and things that help people come into pregnancy as healthy as possible. There's a theory of weathering where
Mhm.
um, we're just exposed to so much constant stress that it builds up. And then by the time you bring it into birth, it impacts outcomes. So this also boils down to like doing what's best, like, in your local community. So, I encourage people to pay attention to what's happening in your local politics, actually. So, what things are happening in your state? Are there things for you to vote on that can help improve access and help improve people's lives so that they come into pregnancy as healthy as possible? So, that's one thing.
It's a huge
Another
thing.
yeah, huge
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
If you wanna do something like, help support, um, doulas, help people have doulas. We know that doulas can make a big difference in outcomes and support for people, so if you wanna look for an organization where you can donate money and someone can then be able to get a doula, that's a great way to help,
Hmm.
but really just starts, like, treating people fairly, and kindly in your community, and then paying attention to those policy things that happen that help people to live better lives.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Is the conversation around health disparities something that is
Mhm.
happening like in the doctor lounge?
Oh, god, no. Mm-mm. No.
No, it's not. It's not
Yeah.
something. I'm like,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
every single doula
Mm-mm.
group, that's like all we talk
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
is like
No, not
advocacy and
really.
disparities. So,
Mm-mm.
so
Nope.
curious if that's
Yeah. No, not really.
yeah,
Mm-mm. No.
in, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so my last, I've got two questions left for
Uh-huh.
you. The next question I want to ask you, if you had advice to give to other medical professionals on self
Mhm.
care, what would you
Mm.
encourage your fellow doctors and the nurses and the people that you work
Yeah.
with to take care of themselves?
Yeah, that's great. Like make sure you're prioritizing your own mental health is important. And that's whether it's something like meditation or exercise or yoga or whatever it is. Just do something to be intentional about making sure your mental health is okay. I like meditation. I like yoga. Those are things that help me.
Hmm.
And then well, actually, I know what I wanna back up and say I know what the thing is. First, you have to give yourself permission to prioritize yourself
Whew.
because like, that's what it. Because so many people don't especially women, don't feel like they can prioritize themselves. They gotta do the 10 other things for this, and, the kids need this or a all of these other things, but none of those things can happen if you're not taking care of yourself. So put yourself first on the to-do list
Hmm.
and then be intentional about making some time for that. It doesn't have to be necessarily anything huge. Sometimes it can't be. Maybe it is just 15 minutes where you can just sit. Man, it might be sitting in the car before you go in the, to yourself, but just make it a priority to actually take care, like make some space and make it intentional to take care of yourself.
Yeah, we can't pour from empty cups.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
from all of the doctors that I do know, terrible at taking care of themselves.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
it's so low on the priority list. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my last question for you,
Mhm.
and please take time to sit with it. If you could send out a wish for the mothers of the world, what would you like that wish to be? Because I'm hoping that the podcast echoes your wish.
Yeah. Um, just to value women's, like, humanity and not just be reduced to we're having children or, just value our humanity. Women, I don't know. We don't get a fair shot. People don't see us always as fully formed, complete, capable of doing so many things. I just feel like we're so undervalued. So really see us and see our humanity and our value and the things that we can contribute. I mean, I think the world would be a better place if women ran it, but um
Couldn't agree
yeah,
more.
right.
Couldn't agree more.
So like just see us, stop putting us in boxes and things like this. See us for who we are and like the magical, wonderful super beings that we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's a great wish for the world. And I do hope it echoes. And I also feel like we should have policy where only like grandmothers or postmenopausal women,
Yes,
the
yes.
crones, should be allowed to
Yes.
hold any kind of governing position. It's like we only elect the crones.
Right,
And I
right.
do think that the world would be a much better place. But I have a lot of wild ideas as to things I think would make the world a better place. And then some of them feel so easy,
Right.
and so I get so excited about this work that I get to do in this path that collectively as women who are tending to birth and to mothers are
Mhm.
walking, and there's so many of us. And my job all day long, I just connect with birth workers that are doing
Yeah.
amazing work, and I'm just like, cool. If it took 150 years to get birth to be what it is today,
Mm,
we have the ability now in 2026 to come together, to communicate, to amplify voices, to share
mhm.
knowledge, to share experiences in a way that we'd never ever have before. And so I do feel as though the change for the better is imminent. Like
Yeah,
it is,
I hope so. I hope so.
it's here.
It's definitely so many people like don't get me wrong, hospital birth has its challenges, but there are a lot of people who are doing great things
Yeah.
and who want things to be who are actually doing the right thing. So just uplifting some of those good
Mhm.
examples because we spend a lot of time in silos, you're
Yep.
here and we have to talk to each other and just uplift the good stories. I agree with that 100%.
Well, you're one of those people
Oh,
that's
well,
doing
thank
really,
you.
really good work. Can you please tell our listeners and viewers how they can find you, how they can find your podcast, and if you have any courses or anything else that they can take to soak
Sure.
up your wisdom?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Birth with Power. It's on hiatus right now because I'm thinking how I'm gonna approach it. But there are 300 something episodes that you can listen to with birth stories, interviews, all kinds of great stuff. And then I have on my website, which is drnicolerankins.com, I have 3 guides that I think are pretty helpful. One that I think people really find, I've been surprised that the one people like the most is something called a hospital tour scorecard. And it's just a list of
Cool.
questions. Yeah, it's just a list of questions you can take when you go on your hospital tour, which you should absolutely do so you can understand about the hospital. I have a similar guide with questions for a doctor, and then I have a labor pain management guide that goes over all of your options for pain management. All of those are completely free. And then I will have a online childbirth education class coming out. I'm not going to say when, but not available right now.
Sometime.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I encourage people to get started with your podcast to hear more stories.
Oh,
And
and I
I
don't know if I
can't,
said the name of it. It's called Birth with Power. Yeah, the name of
yeah,
the podcast is Birth with Power. Yeah.
birth with power. And you can
Mhm.
find it on all streaming platforms.
Yep.
Great. I want to say, like, this episode was brought to you by Birth with Power. Go check it out. But we don't know how sponsorship works over here at most of the world yet.
Right.
But I do want to thank you tremendously. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wombs of the World podcast as we're getting started and just hoping to amplify voices and build these bridges between the doula, the medical,
Mhm.
these spaces where I'm just finding in so many places this like internal war
Right.
that's happening, and it's just like that's not the point, you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Fighting each other is not doing any good for anybody. So
Mm-mm.
thank you so
No.
much for
Sure.
advocating for doulas and for
Yeah.
taking the time to be on this podcast. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
and the work
Thank you
that
for
you're
having
doing.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm your host, Charlotte Brielle Huff. This space exists to remind us that culture is dynamic, but birth is universal, and that the way that we welcome life shapes families, communities, and generations to come. If today's conversation moved you, share it with a fellow birth worker, a parent, a student, and explore more of our global trainings, programs, and community at wombsoftheworld.com. Until next time, may you walk gently, listen deeply, and remember that birth belongs to us all.